Okay, you live. You good? Okay, at this time, we will call the February 13th, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting to order. I'll do a quick roll call. Supervisor Ayers.
Here.
Supervisor Day.
Here.
Supervisor Lyons.
Here.
Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
And Supervisor McDaniel's present as well. We will now have a prayer for the board, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Those attending are not required to participate, but if you'd like to join us, please stand.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us all here together tonight to do the work of the people. We ask for your continued blessings. We ask that you give the supervisors the wisdom and the courage to make the decisions that are necessary. And we ask for your continued blessings throughout the week. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. We'll do our best to take citizen comments remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. To join by telephone, you may dial into one of the numbers listed on the county website. The webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise your hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you're calling in by telephone. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I have one, if I may. I hate to do it to the board as nobody likes surprises, and it's not really a problem, so it's not a surprise, but it's something I'd like to add. There's was some request from farmers markets to hopefully look at extending the term of permits instead of making it an annual term. And Ms. Huffman did some work on potential ordinance to do that. And that requires a public hearing, obviously, in order to change county code, and backing the timeline up in order to possibly get that done so that the applications can get in 30 days before the market starts. This agenda would be the best to take a look at, hopefully possibly scheduling a public hearing. So I would just like to add that to the agenda where we can discuss it and see if the board would be amenable to that.
We'll add an informational item as item number 12 under general items for that.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Are there any recognitions or presentations tonight?
No, sir.
All right. Citizen comments. It's time we'll open it up for citizen comments. Please address the board as a whole. Please come to the podium up front. Please state your name, magisterial district, and limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. So anyone signed up to speak in person? If they're related to the Speedway, we'll take those when we take that action under consideration. Okay. Is there anyone else outside of Speedway? Anyone didn't get a chance to sign up, wish to address the board? All right. If you'd like to come forward, please state your name, magisterial district.
Good evening. I'm Brian Crockett, live at 230 Thomas Road in Lexington. And I don't know much about the information, but I've been watching on two issues that's happening in our community. One is the length of time that it's taken us to get internet throughout the entire community. I hit bits and scratches, but the dates keep on getting moved back. So if there's any way that the Board of Supervisors can execute and get to the next level of this, we would really appreciate it as a community. It gets awful rough out of there. When you have bad weather, you don't get any internet connection. So I know this is enthusiasm. The rest of the country, I find that we're almost getting behind the schedule as the rest of the country in rural areas. So if we can expedite that, that would be wonderful. I'm a resident of Effinger area, Collierstown I live, and I'm really concerned. I read the Advocate every month, and the first thing that I look for in the Advocate is the percentage of calls that are not being returned. And I just want to go public on everybody's behalf. When you see numbers like 50%, are we really going to wait for something bad to happen to somebody because we didn't get emergency services to them in a timely manner? And I would hate to see that happen, but I also find that many times we get caught behind the times and we're going to work on it and work on it and work on it, but nothing is getting done. And the important thing here is not the bake-offs and the cookouts and all those things. The important thing here, if somebody calls for an emergency situation and they really have a health crisis, is that we're able as a community to respond. And I don't want to me, as a citizen, I really don't want to hear, well, we're working on it and they did this and that. It's not going to happen unless the 4 or 5 of you on this committee go ahead and execute, bring people together, go public with it, and make it really happen for our community. I think it's really important. And I just don't want to see something bad happen and you find out that the responses were that low. I don't think I want to blame anybody. I really want an overall solution to get something done because it's not working the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, anyone online wishing to address the board?
No hands raised, sir.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's move on to approval of the January 23rd, 2023 minutes. Everyone had opportunity to review those. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, sir. I was absent. I would normally abstain, but I did notice that at top it listed me as present. So if someone would make a motion to approve the minutes with that being marked as absent as the rest, I appreciate it.
Okay. Is there a motion to do so? To approve with that change?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right. Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Abstain.
and Chair votes yes as well. Next, we have the consideration of the county financial package. Mr. Harrison.
Yes, we have new appropriations in the amount of $348,202. The majority of that going to dispatch. Total bills for January amounts to $943,860.71. And we were able to get the literary loan application for the Floyd case in time.
Is there any questions for Mr. Harrison? Any comment? Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. While we got you, Mr. Harrison, I believe I have heard rumors or whatnot, but is it, are we looking to move to a consideration of financial at every meeting or just once a month, or is
yes,
it a
thank you.
timely manner?
Yes, starting in March, thank you, we'll be ready to start paying invoices twice a month rather than once a month.
For a
So
more speedy process?
so that we can, yes, so to avoid late charges and also to keep vendors happy.
Okay.
And so we'll have this bills list twice a month, starting in March.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the consideration to amend the FY 2024 budget schedule.
Yes.
Shooter.
Yes, so there's a joint work session planned with PSA and the EDA scheduled for the board's next meeting on the February 27th. And that agenda may be fairly heavy anyway. And so typically we'd have a budget presentation at that meeting in the past. That's about the time, the second February meetings when we have the introduction of the budget. But since it's going to be fairly heavy, I have polled the board and we'd like to amend the budget schedule to have a meeting just on the budget the following Monday, March 6th, rather than presenting it on in the midst of everything else. And additionally, we may have some other requested, just a heads up, we may have some other requested budget schedule amendments moving ahead. based on the fact that one thing this year is the equalization from the reassessment. And instead of a 1 week public hearing notice, it's a 30-day notice. So when we built the budget last year, I think Ashton and I were looking at it, or last fall, and we weren't calculating that in. So we may be able to make it, but more to come on that. We might be coming back to that.
Okay. All right. So is there a motion to change the budget schedule as presented?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have the review of the Natural Bridge Speedway Annual Report. Mr. Sladen. We'll let Mr. Sladen give his presentation, and then we'll take citizen comments, okay?
All right, I'll have a brief PowerPoint presentation, just reviewing the purpose of the annual report, and then turn the floor over for a couple of representatives of the Speedway itself. Here. All right, this is, of course, the 2022 annual report of the Natural Bridge Speedway. Essentially, just review briefly the purpose of the annual report. Per condition number 1 of the special exception permit, the annual report is required to include a summary of all conditions and how they were met throughout the racing season. Additionally, the annual report is required to review the proposed racing schedule for the upcoming year. In this case, it'd be the current year, 2023. Lastly, the staff portion of the annual report includes the review of zoning violations associated with the previous racing season, if any. You'll notice in your package that the 2022 annual report has been submitted in 2 parts. One portion pertains to the time frame when Mr. Joseph Glassford was operating the track. Mr. Glassford is the owner, and at the beginning of the season, he was operating the track, and that's approximately from the start of the season till July 16th, 2022. Second portion of the permit pertains to the time frame when Miss Tiffany Kidd was operating / leasing the track. That was approximately from July 25th, 2022 till the end of the season, plus 1 November after the season, November 18th, 2022 racing event. The Office of Community Development issued 3 formal zoning violation letters in 2022. The violations include, obviously, some of the letters included multiple violations, but overall, in summary, the violations included 1 violation pertaining to the lack of trash removal, 1 violation pertaining to the lack of basic life support ambulance on site during an event, 1 violation pertaining to racing past curfew, and 1 violation for racing after the season ended. That was, of course, the November 18th event. Per conditions, the racing season legally ended, I should say, on November 15th. There were 2 formal violations associated with dust control or lack of dust control. With that, both Ms. Kidd and Mr. Glassford are in attendance to represent the track. And at this time, I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Kidd. Okay, 1 second, please. I'll stop sharing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I just wanted to come and talk about some things that we have planned to control to make sure there's no further violations this year at the racetrack. As far as dust control, we have an extra water truck that will be down there. David Reynolds at Fairfield Tire actually sponsored that. And then I actually have one for myself as well that I bought last year for the racetrack. We also have some different things going on this year involving kids as well, ages 3 to 5. We added a Little Rascals class. It's an electric go-kart class that we're going to have. And then the Power Wheels as well. We have, a lot of support from the community. We've been able to get some sponsors on board to make sure that we have like extra boards for safety at different areas where you can stand and watch the races. we have a lot of community support. We have in our general rules, I think everybody has a copy of that. We have limited each class to 30 minutes. That way that there is no going over curfew, because I know that was an issue last year. I did get a call about that because we did run that Friday of the Fall Classic over. And I just want to say from my point of view is that I had a lot of people come from out of state and, had plans to go somewhere the next day, and the track was not ready. We have extra roll-in vehicles this year to ensure that once we water the track and it's ready to race on, we can get it packed in and not delay the start of the race. And then allowing that 30 minutes for each class too will help us as well. So we have a lot of stuff in place this year. We put in the general rules for all the drivers that was posted on Facebook for all of the drivers to see that, it's no alcohol, that we're going to make sure, that we can randomly give you a breathalyzer down there. That way we're controlling any outbreaks that could happen down there at the racetrack. So we have a really good year and plan. And I know that it's been rough at the racetrack. And so I'm sorry for that. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is that all the presentation you have, Mr. Slade? Okay. All right. So at this time, would the board like to hear the citizen comments, or would you like to ask any questions you may have of Mr. Slade from his kid?
Mr. Slade, a couple questions. Are there any, what's written in for penalties if there are violations, if any, other than a warning letter? Is there?
Penalties come under section 1103 of the Rockbridge County Land Development Regulations, and we can start with a $200 penalty for the initial summons, and that's how we do it. We file a civil summons through the circuit court, and not more than $500 for each additional summons. Each day during a violation is found shall exist as can constitute as a separate offense. However, it has to be one violation per every 10 days, essentially. So it starts as a $200 fine, goes to a $500 fine, and we have the ability to go up to not to exceed a total of $5,000 or more. The other part of it that we have talked about in the zoning violation letters throughout the year is the revocation of the actual permit.
Okay, and how many times has the racetrack been fined?
The racetrack has not been fined. Last year, the racetrack was not fined.
Do you know when the last time they were, or have they ever been?
To my knowledge, I don't think they've ever been fined.
How do we, but you can. impose
Well, and
a
that's
fine.
one thing I did address during the last the last zoning violation, and I have the exact language in here. But what we've done in years past is essentially started with a clean slate at the beginning of the year. For example, if a dust control issue came out, we would write them a formal zoning violation and say, get it ready for next days or next week's racing season type thing. And so what I think what we're forced to do, I was about to say what I'd like to do, but I don't even think that's the case. I think what we're forced to do is not have that clean slate going into the 2023 racing season, but rather, have that we're all on the same page. And I realized when Mr. Glassford took over the track with new ownership, there's obviously always growing pains in any type of business. It is a science, if you will, to get the track conditioned correctly with water or too much water. But back to the dust control, I think what we'll do next year, based on the board's direction, is just go straight to the civil penalty. And in my opinion, I think you do have to do the civil penalty prior to talking about the revocation of the special exception permit.
The 11-03
Yes.
section for the penalties, does that pertain just to the racetrack, or is that any
That's
violation?
any violation, and that's our authority to impose those civil penalties. So that could be for any violation of the provisions of the land development regulations.
And what would it take for us to change the penalty amounts?
I think we follow state law in that particular case. I'm fairly confident that we would follow state law in that case, but I'm uncertain. I could find out for sure and report back to you at a later date.
Any other questions for Mr. Slayton?
Chris, I believe there's some allowance for going past the 11 o'clock. Is there-
Yes,
is it
it is
15 minutes?
under condition number 2, it says that essentially you have a 60-minute grace period for each race day in the event of racing's delays due to weather or accident. In no event will any race commence after 11 p.m. And so if you're in a mid-process of it, you have the ability to race over. The particular one that we're talking about was very unfortunate event, and it didn't conclude until 12:40, if I recall correctly, on the one that resulted in a formal zoning violation.
I mean, that was my point. There is some flexibility for delays during the racing evening, but
That is
we've got to stick to what that is. Well, there's
Yes.
already some grace period.
There is a 60-minute grace period for each race day due to weather or accident.
Sure, which happens. I
Well,
mean,
wait a minute though. So in effect, are you saying that it's not 11 o'clock, it's 12? I mean, if there's a 60-minute grace period every night, then that really means it's 12.
If there's for weather or accident.
Okay.
But also, it's also important to understand that no racing shall commence after that time frame.
Yeah, if you're in the middle of a race and the clock starts at 11 o'clock, you can
finish
conclude.
your race.
Yeah.
Which really, and the racers in the room will be a better resource than myself, but it's very unusual that you would have a 60-minute race at this level. Let's put it that way.
that's where I think I was getting the 15-minute time frame that I suggested. It probably wouldn't go that long. I'd had one question about, I don't know if it's more for you or for Ms. Kidd or for the group. And I wasn't sure when I should ask that.
You can go ahead and ask it now.
I
Before we
guess there's
open
no
up
better
the
time.
comment.
So obviously, as Mr. Slayton mentioned, and unfortunately, in the 2022 racing season, majority of the issues seem to be with dust control or in one case, maybe overwatering. Do you have and that is a science. I probably wouldn't be able to do it. Do we have an assigned person now or a technician or something that can give us some idea that we have a better plan for that?
Yes, sir. When the dry season hit last year, it was unexpected. It's something, it's a hard way to learn. We definitely need a backup supply of water, in which we have water stored in these tanks now.
And another truck.
We have 2 new trucks from the time that I started last year. That was one of the issues, was actually 2 trucks broke down on the same day. One of those dust control issues. We have sponsors and people helping us out that will help us on our diesel trucks and things, keep them going, so that doesn't happen.
But so one more time, just to see if it's a correct question to ask, is there a person who knows how much water is supposed to go on a track and when it's supposed to go on? You know, is there somebody sort of in charge of that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And on the dryness today and how it's been that week, yes, there is somebody in place to make sure we keep the dust down. There's also an additive to put in there now. That helps. But yes, there is.
Good.
definitely
Thank you.
Any other questions for everyone? Citizen comment? All right, thank y'all very much. All right, at this time, we'll open up citizen comments. Again, we ask that you come forward to the podium, state your name, Astro District, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Ms. Whitten, could you call the first person?
Yes, we have a Craig Moore.
Afternoon, folks. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak. Again, Craig Moore. One of the things, I'm moving to the Natural Bridge District. Originally grew up there, not there yet, but hope to be there soon. So, and I can remember when this used to be a Leggett's, my mom would bring me here shopping. So it's good to be back in here. So it makes me a little nervous being up here as opposed to when I was shopping clothes with her, but that was some time ago. So, but appreciate, again, you all have an opportunity to listen and talk about these issues. So here with the Natural Bridge Speedway, what started in 1954. Awesome place. If you've, how many people been there? You don't have to raise your hand, been there. Yeah, but yeah, very cool place to go. Enjoy it. Like the opportunity to go there. But one of the things to think through is what is going on there today. You got a community in which to operate. So we need to be thinking about that, respectful of that environment that goes on there. And so with that, Also, one of the things I noticed in here is talking about the liability. You know, do they have adequate liability? When you start introducing a lot of dust and that dust moves out on the dry well road, there's a risk factor associated with that too. And I appreciate the town act, or excuse me, used to be in the town of Christiansburg, moving here. So sorry about that, supervisors. But with the county here, that risk that's associated with that dust, if there happens to be accidents out there, who is liable for that? You know, that dust coming up, teenager driving through out there, run into a ditch, hit another car, whatever may be going on with that. Again, you know, you'd hate to see the racetrack be impacted by that type of accidents. And I hate to use the word negligence, but it's been noted that there's a dust issue and how that dust is being handled. They're starting to take care of it, which is a very good thing. So again, appreciate the town doing due diligence and working through this. To me, that's very important for me, is the due diligence that the town is taking through working this, as well as the racetrack operators seeking that, you know, taking that information, putting that into place. So one of the things there, again, is the dust, the issue with it in terms of liability. Talk about liability in the conditional use permit. Another aspect with the dust, and speaking with the Virginia Department of OSHA, or excuse me, Occupational Safe and Healthy Administration, there's no issues with the dust in the surrounding residents. That only applies to the employees. So the employees would need to file a complaint, and there are silica dust issues, things of that sort for the dust in terms of their people that are working there. So there's a concern about the health of the people that are actually running the facility as well, or potentially. Again, been there since 1954. You would hate for something like this to trip up the operation and all of a sudden create an undue burden on the facility. I like races. So seeing those things again, but again, it gets back to due diligence. Appreciate the staff here working through, making them aware of those issues. And then also another thing that actually I didn't realize was I think there was some illegal or some type of trash landfill going on. If you're aware, there's a huge sinkhole that runs along Drywell Road that all the water, I think it's about 500 acres that drain into that sinkhole. And so that sinkhole probably ends up being someone's aquifer drinking well water in that area. So again, if I lived along that road, I'd be doing a baseline of my well just to make sure what the chemical contents of it were. So if anything ever did happen there, have that information. But again, so you have the liability, the landfill there. Again, I appreciate what you all are doing. So I know it's a lot, talking through a lot of different things, very nervous being up here, but appreciate the opportunity to come up here and talk through this. But again, to me, it's doing due diligence so that someone can't claim plausible deniability. Oh, I didn't know this was happening. You're laying it out, documented. Again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Next up.
We have a Dale Moore.
My name's Dale Moore. I'm in the Natural Bridge District, and I'm a neighbor of the Natural Bridge Speedway. And I'm gonna hand this to y'all. And he can hand those out. Those are pictures of the dust issues. When you hear dust, you might think it's just a little bit. I want y'all to look at these pictures and see if y'all think that is satisfactory. I mean, it's been addressed here, and I appreciate y'all bringing up some good questions, and hopefully the racetrack owner and manager address these issues. I guess my thing is, the reason I'm even here today is to make y'all aware of it and what are the ramifications, which it was addressed a little bit about if they violate these permits, this permit to special use, what can be done about it. It's not, and again, I appreciate what they're saying, but this has went on for several years. I mean, it's went on since I've lived there 43 years, but this is only to concern to Mr. Lafford and some of them here. But
I'm sorry, to clarify, you've been having trouble for 43 years? Or
well,
just the last
I've
couple
had,
of years?
well, no, it's been an ongoing thing for years. I mean, I want to thank the county administrator and his staff on actually helping get to this point with me, and because I never did get this before. When I would complain, I wouldn't get a call back from the county administrator, and I'm not going to say when that was because I really don't know, but I appreciate his help. He's and Chris, they've been both right there. But trash, the owners before, they had people come out after the race, they'd come through and pick the trash up. Very seldom ever had any issues.
Now I get beer cans, I get pop bottles, I get McDonald's bags, whatever, out in the yard, and I'm sure my neighbors up and down Route 813 have the same issues. The noise, I mean, I understand that a race can run over the time limit. But again, I hope they can keep that at a minimum, because when you live right there and these people that leave that racetrack want to run 100 miles an hour, and I'm serious, I had the sheriffs out there, they caught one of them doing, I think it was like 70 or 80 miles an hour coming up Drivewell Road. That I've got kids, grandkids and stuff there. And it's just, people don't respect the neighbors on that road. And I'd like some way to hold somebody accountable for, maybe put a public service announcement out to keep the trash under check, or when you leave, be respectful, not to, I mean, like I say, y'all don't live there, but they come out of there squalling and spinning tires. I've seen fights up there in front of my house at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. They get drunk down there. Again, I'm not here to shut it down or nothing. I want to work with them, but I think it needs to be something done to help the neighbors of that area to keep this thing under control and keep it going.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank y'all.
Mhm.
I appreciate it.
Next up.
And I apologize, I can't read the last name, Francis Bruley.
He's reminding me I have 3 minutes, and as Dan will tell you, I can be long-winded, and Mr. Day will tell you the same thing. I am Francis Ruley. I actually live in the city of Lexington. However, I do own property in both the Buffalo District and South River. I have been attending Natural Bridge Speedway for 56 years, since it opened full-time in 1968. I am also the mother-in-law of a former owner of the Speedway. So I can agree somewhat with everything both Mr. Morris have said. There have been issues, and I hope and pray that when he said he got along with some of the owners, that was my son-in-law he was talking about. However, what I'm here to say is, what do our kids have in this county to do other than to go to a high school football game? Would you rather have them out on the street drag racing or participating in the class, the rookie division, that this kid has put in place last year when she started? Now, to tell you how I know, because I have spent the entire time she has operated that track in her tower with her, not as a paid employee, but as an advisor who has been there and seen and knows that track pretty much inside and out. Can I water the track? I could probably run the water truck, but no, I don't want to do that. But as far as the rest of the operations, I could. In front of you, you have been given by Mr. Slayton a set of general rules. I hope you take the time to read them. Because bottom line, guys, if you get in somebody's pocketbook, they're going to stop the drinking, the fighting. We're going to have, there is a time limit on practice, and there's a time limit on races. I have done everything I can to help this kid control it. I have pulled rules from every track that these guys could lead and go to. So we either bring revenue into this county and hope and pray we can keep our kids off the street and alive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Rose.
That's all who's signed up.
Is there anyone else who didn't get the opportunity to sign up wishing to address the board on this issue? All right, we will stop citizen comments there. Is there any board discussion?
Well, I mean, I would say I'd like both. I'd like the racetrack, and I'd like these rules to be followed, the dust to be controlled, and the trash to be picked up. And if it's not, personally, I think the fines need to begin. That's how I feel about it.
Well, as usual, I agree with Miss Rowley. You have to be crazy not to agree with her. But we go a long way back, and I think the racetrack is important. It provides a good opportunity for our youth. But that being said, it comes with responsibility. I've heard lots of good things that happened with the change over last year. And I, for one,
think that it's headed in the right direction. But I'm also agreeing that there will be consequences. If you can follow the rules, we're 100% behind you. If you break the rules, it's going to cost you and it'll shut you down eventually. I think you got enough good people to do it right. And I think we need to give them that opportunity.
I'm 100% behind all that, and I would just reiterate the economic benefit to our county by having this track here. So many of them have closed, and there aren't as many as they were. And your schedule here put together, the series races we're bringing in, is it's all good stuff. But just like everybody else, I gotta say, the permits, it was issued for the reasons it's issued for, and it's got to happen that way. So please continue with it. Seems like, as they had said, the good plan you have. Let's make it happen for the community. Thank you.
As the Natural Bridge representative, I can agree with the fact that the Speedway is a vital part of not only our district, but our community and county at large. Does many good things. I don't think anybody wants to shut you down. We certainly want to support you. There are issues that need to be addressed. They're going to have to be addressed every single week. You can't have the dust. I mean, if you got 2 water trucks, that's great. If they're, for some reason, they're not running, guess what? You can't run a race that weekend. It's just as easy. I know that impacts your pockets. You want to open the gates and have a mission, but you just got to follow the rules. And you got to work with the community out there as far as picking up trash and stuff like that, and doing whatever you can do to help with announcements and stuff like that at racetracks. Don't be littering, and you want the people who come to help you and support you, not go out and then cause issues with neighbors, and neighbors come to the supervisors, and supervisors are coming to you or Mr. Sladen or someone like that. So, do whatever you can to help. And we appreciate it. And I agree, we try to work with you as best we can. If it's a repetitive issue, then, and we have the reason, you understand, if the issues aren't met, there may be a fine involved. So as long as we're all on the same page.
Well, why don't we start with the violations that occurred under your watch? Give you credit for that,
I'm not sure.
instead of going back to the very
I
beginning.
don't
of
think
it.
we can do that. I
So
think
the clean slate was really just the beginning of the race season is what I was referring to, not necessarily, or not ownership, I should say.
You were saying we're not going to give a clean slate.
Yes, and so Miss Kidd and Mr. Gladsford are well aware of the rules, you know what I mean? And
They
so,
are, so why can't we give them a clean slate? They're well with the rules, they're going to obey them.
Well,
But
I will
we'll
note-
come down hard.
Understood, but I will note that the second half, there were violations in the second half of the season as well.
Right, that's what I'm saying. If she repeats a violation that she previously was responsible for, we should take action. But if
well, for example, the 3 ones that we've done for 15 years now are racing after curfew, not having a not having a BLS, basic life support ambulance on site, and dust control.
Okay.
And so what you're saying is, the basic life support ambulance, that we should write them 1 zoning violation for not having a BLS on site and then proceed with civil penalties after that. I'm just not,
saying, had she done that before?
No, sir.
That didn't happen.
no, sir.
do we have, but surely she knows that.
Yes,
You
and
know
that's what I'm
The
saying, that
point is
that
you
we know
know
those.
that,
And so,
Why did they get, no one should have one basically, we're saying that we would be giving them a free pass, which, why would we do that?
Well, then I want to make sure we do that with all our conditional use permits across the county.
I agree with you there.
Right, so I'm just saying it should be consistent across
everything we get from the floor.
And so rather than, and what I'm saying is rather than, and I agree, there's been some years I've been here that we have not had any violations, formal zoning violations in there. But what I'm saying is starting in 2023, if we have a dust control issue, if we have a trash issue, if we have a curfew issue, we have any issues with the 1 through 13 conditions, it will start as a civil penalty. And again, we know them. They're notorious. It's again, curfew, dust control, BLS, and trash. And those are all, it takes time, and it takes a team, it takes community, if you will, to get all those working correctly. But, you know, I think that's the direction that we're at. I mean, I think that's.
And I'm just saying we should do that with all our conditional use permits.
We are very consistent. That's correct. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, one other suggestion I had, just to keep us all involved, it's okay with you. I know it's in Natural Bridge District and I respect that issue, but if Mr. Slayton would, if it's okay with you, Mr. Slayton could send, if there is a zoning violation, to all of us, just so we're all aware, formally aware of that there was one. If it's not, then don't have to. But I was just reading those, and you know, obviously you were copied on that, and I heard about it, but it just.
I mean, Mr. Slayton's very good. I mean, I think he, and you know, again, to be consistent, I don't know that you copy all board members on all zoning ordinance or special exception permit violations.
I don't. And y'all know that. I mean, as individual, I do my best to keep y'all in the loop on your district issues and then group as needed. But that certainly can, I mean, per that direction, I have no problem at all informing the entire board.
Well, I don't want to turn it into something bigger than it is. So that's,
I mean, I think we just need to stay consistent. You know, there have been issues in the past with the racetrack. We're all well aware of that. But at the same time, you're doing your best. You try and you understand the rules. You understand if you don't have ALS, you know, the basic life support ambulance. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure they're appreciative of that. But I mean, yeah. It means a lot to the community. We want you to be successful at it. We just, as long as we're all on the same page and we move forward, you know, I think we're good to go. Is there anything else you needed to add, Mr. Slade?
No. Do we?
I just got one thing to add. I didn't want you to anyone to misunderstand or misconstrue my comment. My thing was there were violations on the second half. I'm very supportive of the racetrack, but Chris and I are the one that gets the calls. And I do think I did see improvement in the second half of the season. And I do think that they're doing their best to correct the things. I am very confident that this will be a non-issue and Chris will not have to issue any citations or, you know,
Well, I mean, more or less, I mean, the whole clean slate thing, I mean, you know, more or less you're starting with a clean slate. It's a brand new year. We're not citing you for anything that happened last year, you know, but just moving forward, if you have a violation, you understand there's going to be a fine, correct?
Yes, that's what we're discussing. Of not having a.
And
this
has
is
there
your
ever been
first
fines
violation.
assessed on the speedway in the past?
Not that I know of. Certainly not in the 3 years I've been the director. No.
I personally was down there 4 times last year for issues. And I know Chris was down there on multiple occasions. And I, you know, when I have to answer to the neighbors when, you know, there were some significant dust problems down there and it was racing outside of the season with dust. So I'll go back to my previous comment. I think that they're moving ahead. They're going to try to do their absolute best to get this done. The conversations about that.
But we're not, I just want to make sure I understand. Take the racetrack out of the equation. For somebody else who has a special exception permit in this county, if they're in violation of it, do we go the route of finding them?
Yes, we have before. Absolutely. Yes. And it doesn't even.
So we're not making a special fine.
No, sir.
for the
No,
racetrack.
sir. No,
Okay.
we're actually going through civil penalties of something currently that probably filed this week that has nothing to do with a special exception. It's just a straight violation of the ordinance.
So we do that with other special exception. permits.
And non-special exception, just zoning
So
violation.
in the
absolutely.
past, if the racetrack has never received a fine, then basically you got a free
Well,
pass.
that's because, again, at the very beginning of the year, it was that, and that's what I was referring to as a clean slate. The very beginning of the year, you started off with 0. Okay, well, then you have a dust problem. We write you a letter. You try to correct that. What I'm saying is moving forward, I would like to skip essentially the, hey, you messed up, and go directly to the civil penalty process during episodes like the dust we have, during episodes of racing, well past curfew to 12:40. In fact, racing on December or November 18th, 3 days after the season, with a plume of dust on that date. So we all know the long and the short of it is, I think we're very confident we know the regulations. We're very confident that they know the regulations. We just have to, point A and point B need to get together. And I've said it each year during numerous ownerships. I hope we have a successful season down there, and you never get a phone call. We never get a phone call. And that's happened. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but it hasn't happened in the last several years. Let's put it that way.
So we have, we need to have a vote, correct?
I think you just a consensus to accept the report. I don't believe it has to be a formal motion. No, sir.
What about what you're asking for?
It does not require a formal motion either.
So it's already in county code and you're already.
Absolutely, yes.
Ms. Kidd, you understand everything that's been discussed? You good to go with it? All right. So is there everybody agree to accept the report? Yep. Okay. Thank you. We hope you have a very successful season. Yeah, please stay in communication with Mr. Sladen and us if you have any needs or anything like that. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, we have consideration to approve the CNS disposal contract. Let's see here, Mr. Meyer, I believe.
Good evening, Chairman McDaniel, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to come out this evening to discuss the renewal of the hauling contract for solid waste and recycling. As you're aware, July 11th, 2022, the county put out a request for proposal for the solid waste and recyclable transportation services. This involved the removal, the transport, and delivery of solid waste and recyclables collected in the county. One proposal was received, and this was evaluated by a board-appointed team consisting of county staff and board solid waste committee members, Supervisor Day and Supervisor Lyons. The committee subsequently entered into negotiations with CNS Disposal. Negotiations were successful. They resulted in an updated agreement for the transportation of solid waste and recyclable materials. Should the board approve the proffered contract that you have, it will become effective retroactive to September 1, 2022. I believe you do have copies of the draft contract in your board packet, and there's also an approval resolution attached for your review as well. Just some of the highlights from the updated contract. We went from a per ton billing to a per pull billing on the roll-offs, the compactor. Our green box locations, the unstaffed sites are still being invoiced at $44 a ton in the new contract. This is up from $32.09 per ton. The recyclables are also going to be billed at a per pull basis as well. We are going to see a little bit of an increase compared to the current contract, but the committee does feel it's a fair contract moving forward. The recommendation tonight is to receive a report, pose any questions you have to members of the evaluation team. If in agreement, we ask that you accept the proposed solid waste and receivable material transportation contract. In addition, staff requests the board to authorize the county administrator to execute the contract documents on behalf of the Board of Supervisors. and to take such other and further actions as may be necessary and appropriate to accomplish this agreement, which shall be approved as to form by the county attorney. If any of you guys have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions for us?
Mr. Chairman, the approval resolution, if adopted, incorporates all of that language.
The only question, and CNS has been doing this for us for a while, and I certainly appreciate their hard work and the time and effort they put into it. It is somewhat concerning at some of our green box locations, what they have to deal with. Whether it's trash outside of the dumpsters, trash, couches. One of them, I believe we had a boat. For the citizens of the county, you need to be more respectful of all citizens of the county, and not just throw stuff off. There's a reason there's a box there, throw it in the box. And, it does concern me somewhat at some of our green box locations, the amount of refuge outside of the boxes and how that looks upon us as a community. Timber Ridge comes to mind. So, my question, not necessarily about this contract, but to your committee, and is what we're doing to address that.
Moving forward, we've had success in your district. We opened up the Natural Bridge Collection Center and haven't had any, maybe 2 instances since that has opened that we've seen trash at the old sites that we've closed down. Citizens have done a good job transitioning to the new center. And that's our plan moving forward as we continue to open up the collection centers. These green box locations will be pulled out, and that'll allow the citizens to come in, and they'll have a manned site there to make sure the trash is being put appropriately where it needs to go.
Good. Hopefully we'll move. I mean, I know some residents enjoy the green boxes, which I'm all for them, as long as you properly maintain them.
Yes,
I mean, throwing stuff outside in the area where the CNS, sometimes they have trouble getting into the lot to even get the trash, which is ridiculous that we ask these people to go out and do that.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So citizens, if you want to keep them, take care of them, is my point. All right, is there a motion to accept the resolution as presented?
Just to, if I may.
Yes.
The plan has always been to replace them moving ahead. I mean, that's what we've been working toward piecemeal, one at a time, is what we've been trying to do. And I do think it was critically important when the board made the decision to provide for large item collection boxes at each one of these staff places. So that, because in the past, you didn't have that. And so there was the only place you could take something large like you're talking about that you can't even get in, they'd have to take that to the landfill. And another thing I meant to say, that the boat actually came from, I believe, Stewart's Draft. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm against green boxes. I'm just saying you need to pay attention to what you're doing and be respectful.
Sure. I just thought that, I just want to clarify where
We're
the committee
moving
is
to
at.
get rid of all the green boxes sometime, at some point. Correct.
All right, is there a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
So maybe.
Second.
All right, Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and Chair votes yes as well.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Daniel.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the emissions tax consideration of change of due date. Ms. Huffman?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this request is to consider changing the due date for admissions tax to the last day of each month for the admissions taxes collected in the preceding month. Currently, we have a due date of end of the month, except for events held sporadically or not on a regular basis. And the due date for those is at 10 days. So in order to make things more efficient in the Commissioner of Revenue's office, there's been a request to modify that so that all of the taxes are due at the end of the month, last day of the month. You have a proposed ordinance showing that change, and if acceptable to the board, it would require a public hearing, which can be scheduled for the February 27th meeting.
Is there any questions for myself? Any concerns? Is there a motion to schedule the public hearing for Monday, February 27th?
I'll move.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have the transient occupancy tax consideration of change of due date. Ms. Huffman?
This is a similar item related to the transient occupancy taxes, but has involved the Commissioner of Revenue Association of Virginia to make a consistent form of making payments of the transient occupancy taxes so that it's more convenient and consistent for the taxpayers as well as the commissioners. So they have created a form that's available online for filing the taxes. However, to use that form statewide, we would need to change, the county would need to change its due date from the end of the month to the 20th of each month. So you have a proposed ordinance reflecting that change. If acceptable, this can be scheduled for public hearing on February 27th.
Is there any questions for Ms. Huffman? If not, is there a motion to schedule a public hearing on the matter for Monday, February 27th?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Thank you, Ms. Huffman.
Thank you.
I don't believe we have any point.
Yeah. Thank you all for your time and consideration. I think we're gonna leave you all to conduct business in the county. We just want to get up and walk out.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I don't think we have any appointments for tonight. Has everyone had an opportunity? I'm sorry, skipped it. All right, we'll go back to, I added as a change of agenda, the farmer's market.
We're torn. I'm getting that
Yeah.
included. Don't skip me in that.
Apologize about that.
Ms. Huffman, does everybody have a copy of the
We have copies.
what's being proposed? I've got one. Thank you. So anyway, we have an ordinance that would need a public hearing, just like the changes that we just discussed. I understand you just got it. I doubt you could digest that in 2 minutes. That's why Mr. McDaniel called it an informational item. Hopefully, you'll look at it and see that it can work. But I would hope that between now and the next meeting, we could address that. But and then one more little thing that I would like to say, as it does require a public hearing, in the interest of time, if we could schedule this for a public hearing, vote to schedule for a public hearing at our next meeting, that would keep things moving along. And I think we can do both at the same time. If we end up not agreeing with something here or not liking it, maybe that gets changed. And if there's public input into that, that may help us, with our decision.
Can you quickly go over are there any substantial changes or what the change would be that we would be discussing?
I would be happy to, but also in the interest of making sure we get it right, I would defer to Ms. Huffman.
Okay. Ms. Huffman, would you mind giving us a quick synopsis?
I'll be glad to. The section, paragraph B of section 4-51. That's on the second page. You see what's in green there? That has just been moved from the end of that section up to paragraph B.
It hasn't changed.
It
It's just
hasn't
moved.
changed, it's just been moved.
Okay.
So if it's in green, it's the same as what it's always been. If it's in purple, it's an addition or correction. So there's one correction and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additions.
So 6 and 7 are an addition.
6, 7, yes, ma'am. And then the paragraph at the end.
And what that did was give an opportunity to clean up some stuff too in the ordinance without really changing it. It just needed to be looked at.
Then down at paragraph E, and this was the request to me, was to look at ways to make this a permanent, not a permanent, but a longer permit than just having to do it annually. And my suggestion was to at least have a permit of 1 year to see how it goes, what the impacts might be. And then, so you see that initial permit for up to 1 year, and then a second paragraph to issue one for 5 years if it's acceptable after that 1 year. And it does count if someone, or could count if someone has had a permit prior to the time of considering this one.
So if someone has one already for this year, next year when they came in, they could get a 5-year permit.
That's the idea.
Okay.
If they had problems, would they still have the 5-year, or could they revert back to every year if they were having any problems, which I can't imagine with the farmer's market. But
Well, the next paragraph provides for revocation of that permit if they are not complying with the approved plans and conditions. So normally what might happen.
Plus they would be fine.
they would be fine.
Well, this is not a zoning provision, so it would not fall under a zoning violation. It would. The farmers market provisions were initially adopted as part of county code because the board at the time wanted them to be permitted in all zoning districts and to focus on what those would accomplish or could be made available and what the neighborhood is like and how well the plan was thought out, as opposed to whether it was an ag district or a business district or an industrial district. So we set it up in the regular county code rather than the zoning provisions. It could have been done in zoning, but it seemed based on the interest of the board at the time that it would work better, similar to the outdoor events and music festivals and similar types of activities.
Well, and if they're doing what they're supposed to do, then also it will save staff time having to do it on an annual basis as well as save the citizen who's responsible for it from having to come in every year. So it's a savings of the citizens' time and a savings of our staff time, as long as they do what they're supposed to do.
That's the hope.
Yeah. All right. Any questions or thoughts? Is there a motion to schedule a public hearing on this matter for Monday, February the 27th?
Yes.
And a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well. Thank you. All right. Monthly staff reports. Has everyone had an opportunity to review? Any questions, concerns, comments?
Mr. McDaniel, I apologize. I missed a key thing to my report. As of January 31st, 2023, our total revenues for the year is 34,009,615, and our total expenses is 33,495,508. And so things are better than expected.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
We never mind getting that report. Anytime you want to deliver.
Only good news.
But the monthly staff reports, is there a motion to approve as accepted or comment? And a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Same board comments?
Yes, Chairman, I would like to address Mr. Crockett's. I wish he were here, and I want to thank him. I would thank him for coming up and talking about the issues as he sees it. But I do want the community to understand when they read in the paper that an agency or rescue has a 50% failed to respond, that it does not mean that we didn't have a plan for an agency that's having trouble getting out. In the case of Effinger, as a matter of fact, very similar to the way Chief Ramsey was toning for Glasgow, it's toned, it's not toned. We're not waiting 8 minutes. So Spencer, maybe you can help me with this, but I just want to make sure that the community knows that we take it very seriously, and as Chief Ramsey does, and that we're not waiting 8 minutes to go to in Effinger when they're having trouble getting out.
Yes, in certain instances, if we know a company or a department is not staffed, Chief Ramsey will have another company dispatched
same time,
for a certain amount of time. The rule of thumb is 8 minutes on second due, but if they know they're not staffed, they try to go ahead and put that call out to the next group. I think maybe what the other thing that he was saying also is not just those instances, but what I teased out of what he was saying was not just that, but the overall issue. And I think that the Fire and Rescue Committee and Chief Ramsey and I that provide input on that committee are working towards these things as evidenced by the actions that the board has taken recently. And that I don't see anything that's continuing.
Well, you know, we've had Glasgow Rescue in here for their issues and all. Looking at the monthly reports, you know, Effinger is obviously having some issues as well. I hope that the same level of due diligence is being paid to them as well as to Glasgow. And if there needs to be actions taken, then they're brought forth the board to look at.
If you'd like me to, I can address the other half of his comment, just for the record.
Please,
I was just gonna do
I was
that
going to
too,
ask you, please do that.
Okay,
Yes.
I saw some eyes up there getting ready to go. So with regard to broadband, for the second year, we've submitted VADI grants and to the state level, and we were told during the application process that number one, you could only have one ISP, internet service provider, per grant application. So anybody's seen the maps and they've been published. We've got a checkerboard in the county that we've identified all the un or underserved areas in the county. And so we did submit 2 grant applications. They were, I believe, fantastic applications. I thought last year's was awesome. So, but we weren't awarded. One of those was with Bark Connects, Spark Electric, and the other one was with Brightspeed. And we were told that, and I think in good faith, they told us at the state level that they would have those announcements ready in mid-December. And that didn't happen. So we started checking again. And that, there's a lot of agents or a lot of localities across the state that applied for funding. And they went to the governor's office around Christmas, and that's where I think they are still sitting. But I'm not 100%. We can't get the information about why we're into February now. We don't have an answer, but I do think that they did not get the federal money. It's still coming, I believe, but they didn't get it in the time frame that they thought they would get it to be able to award. That's what I've teased out of all this. But we do still have 2 active grants that, along with some long drop programs for the drops that are way out, I forget what the threshold was, but it's a fair distance away from a road or power line or utility line. It's claims universal broadband. So tremendous amount of work in that. So we are not sitting on our hands. I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Is there any anticipated timeline on that?
I don't know. No, I really don't. I mean, we've checked in and asked our General Assembly representatives to advocate for us, which they've done a very good job pushing to support our grant application.
All right. Any other board comments? Mr. Lewis, you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple quick things from the local VACO local government day. I attended in Richmond. Usual pushes for the expanded local authority and stop the unfunded mandates. And as far as unfunded mandates are concerned, I think we've all probably heard, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know necessarily, but I just do want to say it's heartening the support that's being financial support that's being put towards education and rescue services. There's some money finally being put to pay for the positions that they say we're supposed to have. So that is heartening as we go through budget season. That's a little glimmer of hope, even in the large gap that we have.
Mr. Day, you have anything? Ms. Ayers?
No.
Mr. Lyons? And I don't have anything either. All right. So I move that the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors convene in closed session to discuss the following. As permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3, discussion or consideration of a matter involving economic development and other public purposes for acquisition of real property for public purposes, or as permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A5, discussion pertaining to economic development and other public purposes concerning a prospective business or industry. All right. Is there a motion to move into closed session? And a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and Chair votes yes as well. Thank everyone for attending. Please be safe on your way home. We're now in closed session. Spencer, you anticipate any action after?
Don't anticipate any action.
Yes, sir. I'll be sure to tell your representative. Motion to return to open session. All right, that's Mr. Lewis. Is there a second to return to open session?
Second.
All right, Mr. Day. All right, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons. And Chair votes yes as well. Certification. I move that the board certify that enclosed meeting just concluded to the best of each member's knowledge, nothing was heard, discussed, or considered except the matter or matters specifically intended in the motion to convene an enclosed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed as exempt from open meeting requirements under provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion. Any member of the public body who believes that there was a departure from requirement 1 or 2 shall state prior to the vote, indicating that the substance of that departure that in his judgment has taken place. The statement shall be reported in the minutes of the body of Virginia Code 2.2-3712. All right, so the certification is there a motion to certify? And second? Second. All right. Ms. Ayers? Mr. Lyons? Mr. Lewis? Mr. Day?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. So we're back in open session. Does anybody else have anything? Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. All right, Mr. Lyons, Mr. Lewis, Ms. Ayers, Mr. Day,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well.